Today we're going to create this fun project. This is super simple. You're just going to need some masking tape, the items from the Curated collection, the third one, with the Hydrus watercolors, and colors that we're going to be using: burnt sienna, sepia, Payne's gray, cobalt blue, hello, sap green. So we're going to be using these 5 colors from the Hydrus set 2, and I have one of the dip pens with a nib in that, and I'm going to show you how you can use that with this project if you did it for an add-on. If you didn't, no worries. You can paint this just fine with your brushes. I will show you both ways. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I have my size 6 round Princeton Velvet Touch from the collection. We have our Strathmore Vision watercolor paper. Now, to make a card, just take a piece of paper, fold it in half. Or if you want a specific size, 5x7 or 4x6, you will just cut your paper down. Anyhow, fold your paper down. You can take the edge like of one of your brushes and, crease that if you need to. I have my set right here of my add-on brushes. That would be these right here. And then I also have the size 10 round from the last Curated collection, which if you guys have been collecting the supplies, then you should have that as well. I don't know that I'm going to use that today, but I do have it handy, so just so that you're aware. I have my size 6 round. My size 6 round is right there. I don't know if I just showed you my size 4. Right now I'm taking a 1-inch, I believe this is a 1-inch piece of masking. I like to use that sometimes when I'm doing birch trees because I can just rip down one of the edges. I'm going to rip this down. I'm going to have a set of 3 birch trees. I like birch trees in 3s. I tried to plant birch trees in a set of 3 in my yard. I actually have an extra that's come up, and I have a set of 4, or a cluster of 4. That's okay. I love birch trees. They are one of my favorite. They're one of my favorite trees. They're one of my favorite trees to look at, like the white paper birches. That's what I have. And they're one of my favorite trees to not only look at in real life, they're definitely one of my favorites to paint. I've got this, whatever end ends up being skinnier, that'll be the top of my tree. See, I'm just tearing it down. This is going to be a super easy way to make them without having to paint on masking and remove it later. I just want an edge that's not perfectly straight because I don't want my trees to be perfectly straight. They have little bumps, and oh my goodness, I'm going to fast forward some of this. I'm just going to take my birch tree and decide where I want it on the paper. And I'm going to want it to go off the paper. I don't want it to come down all the way. I'm going to go like this. And I think I want my birch tree, I think I want the cluster to end right about there. So I'm just going to rip my masking. Here we go. That will be my tree. I have another piece, and for this one, I'm just going to tear however it goes down the center, trying not to stick it to itself. I'm making a mess. Well, that tree just wanted to get weird on me. It's all right. We'll work with it. Okay, so just take your masking, and if you have smaller masking, you can do that. I just like to use the inch wide. I can kind of do, and I know that this edge is straight. I really don't necessarily want that, but it's fine. Yeah, I'm gonna go that way. I'm gonna go right there. It's going to stop. Maybe it's a little bit further. This one is a little behind my other tree. So right here where my tape ripped weird, I'm going to turn that into a branch. It's going to be a branch. I'm not going to worry about the fact that that side is straight. It's fine. And then we have this one. Just looking for what side is thicker. Well, that is a wonky tree. That's all kinds of weird. I think I'm going to take this part off. And I'll just let that go back there. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so there are that's going to be my birch trees. That's it. Don't overthink it. Now I'm just going to put this tape down. We can use our heat tool or a hair dryer to help release this cleanly afterwards. Now we're just going to paint a background. Super simple. So I have my Hydrus colors here, and they're kind of a mess right now because I've been using them. This is the plate. If you saw the unboxing, I will try to make sure that I put a link to that up here if you didn't. Either way, if you want to get the items in this curated collection, all the links will be in the description below. If you're wondering what is a curated collection, it is a collection of art supplies that I choose that will all work very well together. And then if you should choose to, you can purchase them and paint along with me throughout the time that I'm covering that collection. I usually have a few videos that you can paint along with. This is one of them for the collection number 3. And we definitely do them during a live stream. So if you get all the stuff, unlike an art subscription box, if you have questions, you can join me during that live stream, paint with me, and ask any questions that you might have. So it helps you learn to use them too. Okay, so this 3/4 inch wash, which is in the add-on set, I have a basic items in the collection, and then I do add-ons that you may choose or not to get that I think would just make the collection a little bit more fun or would be useful with it. But the basic collection, I try to have that be right about the same type of price as like an art subscription box. So this is my answer to monthly art subscription boxes. Instead of getting a bunch of supplies blindly that you have no idea if you're going to like them or even want them, you always know what's in the curated collection, and you can make the choice if it is right for you or not, or something that you want to give a try. And then we always learn to use the products together. Okay, so when I put these on my palette, these had dried down. If they dry down, that's not a problem. You can re-wet them. So you don't have to wash off your paint and get rid of it after you're done painting if it's something that you might come back to. So I have some cobalt blue here, and I have wet the top 2/3 of my background. That's going to make noise. I'm going to move that. Let me see. I have it on the left side of this. This is just taped to a board that I got from the Dollar Tree. It's a chalkboard. Basically, that's what they sell it as, is a chalkboard. But I got it at the dollar store. So my cobalt blue, and I'm just going to come in and this is very light, right? So there's a bit of water in my paint. It's not full strength. And I'm going to add this cobalt blue for my background, for my sky. And you notice I'm not worried. I'm not worried if I have spaces. It's just going to look like clouds in the sky. I don't need a perfect smooth wash. You can do that if you want to, but it's not necessary. There's our sky. It's just going to look like clouds in the background. You'll see it has grabbed some of that on the tape. The edges of the tape have that little bit darker blue. Don't worry about it. This is not going to be a problem. Okay, and down the bottom, we need some grass, right? Because our trees are going to be on the ground. So let me just rinse that brush out. Again, I was using the 3/4 wash brush just to do that quickly, but you could, if you needed to, put it on with your size 6 if that's all you have, or if you have the size 10 round from the last curated collection, that would be a great brush to have used also. Let's mix up some grass. Now, one of the things I discovered during my flop, if you would, I created a card that was very bad. I shared it over on Discord. So channel members and patrons, you probably saw it back when I shared it, but it was terrible. But I did discover, it was a learning piece. I discovered that if I mix my Viridian Green with my sepia or sepia, I get a beautiful muted green that I love for like some grass. And I can warm that, and this is already feels like it's drying. I need to wet the bottom of my paper again. Or maybe I didn't even wet the bottom of my paper. I don't think I wet it. The tape looks dry too. So I'm going to wet the bottom of my paper now. Right up to where my sky was. Now, why didn't I just wet the whole thing? because if I stop right there, then you see I got this like horizon line. My blue is only going to travel as far as that. This paper dried very quickly. Everything dries quickly in the studio, but if it didn't, you could have waited for that to dry and then come back with a green. So I have a little bit of Viridian with some sepia to get this lovely color. And I'm going to actually grab just a touch of my Payne's Gray, which I really think looks more like indigo than Payne's Gray, but I'm cooling down this green right here. I'm really cooling that down. I'm going to put that furthest away. That's going to go back here. Notice I paint right over my trees. Rinsing that brush out, I am using the 6 round, and I'm just coming back in, tapping my brush on my sponge. I use a regular sponge. I've shared that before, just like a sponge for your kitchen. In fact, in my little plein air kit, that's exactly what I have, is a piece of kitchen sponge that I put in a small tin. Now I'm going to let this start to get a little warmer, a little bit warmer green as we move towards the front or the foreground. Again, I paint right over those spots. So my sap green, right? Let me just get my drop of my sap green there. See that moving out, and you see the yellows that are in that as it's kind of separating because this spot was wet. And grab a little bit of that. See, now that's even warmer. I'm dipping into my water. I'm just going to let these kind of mix right here on the surface. So I go from cooler, gradually getting warmer. See, my card is already wanting to be dry, which is why I can definitely keep going in and grabbing more water. I'm going to wet this one more time. Just grabbing that big wash brush, just so this paint is going to flow easier, only because everything is drying too quickly. Again, just like with my sky, as I move forward, putting down this first wash, I'm not going to mind if some areas are a little darker than others. If some spots got a little bit more paint, as long as I'm moving from left to right, right? As long as my brush strokes are going from left to right, that's all I'm worried about right now. I'm going to come back over here to this cooler blue that I had. I had a lot of water on my brush, so this is very dilute mixture, and I'm just dropping more in to the back, right near my horizon. I'm going to pull down. So how did we get that? We took Viridian. Here I still have a spot on my sepia or sepia, right? That's going to neutralize that, make a beautiful green. And then I'm grabbing a little bit of this Payne's Gray, which is very blue. This is a very, very blue Payne's Gray. And there's probably a lot of paint on my brush. Don't be scared. I'm just gently kind of pulling. You're going to see me kind of like I'm skipping along on my paper. Don't worry about there being some lighter spots. I'm going to work this right down through some of this warmer green and let those mix and do their thing. Right here where I have like a space between my trees where I'm going to see behind the trees. I'm going to put a little bit more of that there. And if you don't have a space between your trees, don't worry about it. And now I'm going to rinse my brush out again. I'm going to come back over here to my sap green. And you saw I just tapped my brush. It's just controlling my water. And I'm going to take some of that sap green and I'm going to keep going. This is just giving me a variety of greens in this first layer. Painting right to my tape and of course right off the edges. I'm just going to work my way back up right to my horizon. So what I did was I pulled, by working from the bottom up, rinse my brush out. I'll do it one more time on the other side. Tap that off. So as I pull out and I work my way up, I'm going to have some of that warmer green And I might be pushing some of that up, and that's fine. I'm just going to go right to my horizon. I'm not worried about, see how this is darker? Don't stress out about your, background. Remember, this is the background. Our focal point is going to be these gorgeous birch trees. Taking some of that cooler green, just going to pull it through here. We didn't put like a sun in our sky, so we're not showing a definitive light source. So we don't have to worry about like casting shadows, like the trees casting shadows. If we wanted to put the sun back here, if this was like a sunset and I put the sun back here, I would do shadows coming out from my trees. I might have to get more sepia. Just gonna grab a little red to neutralize that. There we go. Good enough. So I'm just dropping in some darker values there. I hope that green did not just run up into my sky, which is possible. And if it did, don't worry. I'm just dabbing where my tape goes up because I don't want the green to travel up my tape. Just trying to create some perspective here. This goes quite a ways away from us. There's nothing in the background back there. We could paint something in there if we wanted to. But again, our main focal point here is going to be these birch trees. I'm using that cooler green, and I'm going to get carried away. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to put a little bit at the base of this tree. Just going to dab a little bit in right there. I'm actually going to lift just a little bit of that and replace that space with our warmer green. I got a little carried away with my cooler green. I need to stop. It's hard to know sometimes when to stop. Kind of walk away, let it dry. Actually, I think I kind of like that. The lighter value. Still have some of that warm green going through this midsection and working my way back up. Just kind of blending it. But again, very easy to overwork, so I don't want to continue. I'm going to stop. I think this looks good. I need to let this dry. Okay, so this is dry. Get that out of our way. It's dry enough. Now let's talk about how we're going to remove our tape. I'm using this as a card. If you were doing this as a painting and you wanted more stuff in your background, maybe you wanted some hills back there, whatever you wanted, you could certainly paint those in. I'm just doing this as a card. I just want a nice field that goes on, and I want these 3 birch trees. I want to be able to put my, sentiment, whether it be happy birthday or happy Father's Day or whatever it is. If I want to write something on the front of the card, I want to kind of have a space, and we're going to come into some of this space, maybe with some branches, but for the most part, we would be able to write something on here. And so that's why I'm leaving this. You could absolutely have painted in like some hills back here or something if you wanted to. However, that could be for another time. Let's talk about how we remove this now. So our tape that's on here, we don't want to rip our card. When we peel tape, normally we peel at an angle away. We can't really, it's kind of hard to do that. One of the things we're going to do is I'm going to use my heat tool. It looks like this. I can link this in the description below if you don't already have one. Or you can just use a hairdryer. If you have a hairdryer, just use your hairdryer on like the warm, not necessarily the hot setting. If you use it on the hot setting, just don't put it too close to your paper. All right, so we are going to take this and I'm going to, just like that, warm up my tape for a moment, then we'll peel the tape together. All right, so I have warmed up my tape. This paper feels warm. That should loosen the adhesive and my tape should come right off. Look at that. We're not worried if anything like this happens. Right? I knew there would be a possibility because the tape is torn. See how the stuff came through here? And I'll show you up close. It's washing out a little bit with the light I have at the top of my desk. But I'm going to go from the bottom because I have that little branch. There we go. There, now you guys can see better. So see how the blue has come in here? We're not going to worry about that. We're not going to worry about that at all. We'll just put the black spots from the birch tree. This is not a problem. So let's talk about how do we do our black marks. We can do them so many ways. Today I'm going to be using a piece of old cut up, like an old credit card. When I cut mine, I cut like, you see I have different angles here because sometimes I need to use a small flat space. I got a little bit larger one there. Of course, I have the whole side. I have this. I have some sharp points that I could use, and I have like rounded edge. I just make different marks when I cut my cards so I can use them in different ways. All right, for our birch trees, now with the Hydra Set 2, paint's great in my opinion. It just looks like indigo. It is not dark enough, but if you see over here, I actually have created a darker color that's more like a neutral tint. We're going to do that right now. So I take my burnt sienna, this one right here, and sometimes your bottles, you might see because when they ship them and they lay flat, you might see that there's stuff that has settled. Just shake all that up. Sometimes you have to shake them for a little bit, but they do, I don't see any that are settled to show you, but they do mix right back together without a problem. So I'm just going to put a drop of my burnt sienna there. And I'm going to take my Payne's Gray and my burnt sienna. Just like I would my ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, we're going to mix those to get my brushes wet. So we're going to take some of the burnt sienna and that Payne's Gray, and we are going to mix ourselves up a nice dark neutral. More burnt sienna. If I go heavier on the burnt sienna, of course, it's going to lean warmer like a brown. And if I lean more with the Payne's Gray, then it's going to be a little cooler. There is a sweet spot where it almost just looks black when you have, they've perfectly neutralized each other. But there we go. That is it right there. That's what I'm going to use. I'm going to save what's on my brush because I can use that for some branches, like branches on birch trees. So unless they're really big branches, they don't look white. They actually, and right here, like I have this little nub. See the little nub that bumps out? I'm going to turn that right, like into a branch that would come up, and it's going to go behind that birch tree over there. See, like that. So I'm going to save what's on my brush for some branch work in a moment, but let's talk about how we make our trees. So I'm going to just take my card where I have this paint on my palette. I want to press, pull. That's going to leave me a little bead of paint along the edge. So I'm going to press, pull, turn and lift. Now I have got little bits of black paint. See it right in there? Then if I come over to the edge of my tree and I press, pull, there we go. So press, pull, lift. So I'm like turning as I lift, and I keep some of that on there. And I'm just going to go along the edges of my tree. Now I don't have to do the same. I take a tissue and like say I want to go with this edge, right? Because I want a little bit more control. There's a nice bead of paint on that. If you can see that, there's a nice bead of paint. See, and it gives me different variations. I can do a couple times, right? Just until that paint runs out. Come grab some more. That was really thick. That's all right. If there's something you don't like, right, lift some of it out. Any areas where you had your blue sky coming in that you didn't want it there, I'm gonna turn. It's gonna be easier for me to turn. So my apologies, but if I turn, I can see to line this up better. And I'm just gonna set it on the edge and pull, set that edge and pull. Right, there's just a little bit here, so I'm pulling more. Okay, that's this tree. Right. And remember I had that little branch? Right? Like this is like a bigger portion of the tree that kind of went off. I'm just gonna pull up some of that. There's some right there. Turning that back around so that you can see them upright. Look at our beautiful birch trees. We're not done yet. There's some darker marks. I'm liking that. So you see I'm just like scraping that paint from my palette. Get that bead on my... There we go. I'm coming right up off my paper. I need the little end. I need some paint for right here. I had some blue that I didn't want on it. Okay. Now, I'm going to let that paint kind of dry for a moment, because if I come right in with a wet brush right now, it's going to move around. Like if there was some like where this got really thick here, if I didn't want that to be like I could come in with my brush, and I forgot that this brush had the color on it. Oh, I just bumped right outside the line of my tree. It's fine. I'm just taking a wet brush and just scrubbing a little bit of this. I kind of lift a little bit of that out because that was a little darker than I wanted. Okay, let's work on giving these a little bit more dimension. So our lines are there, and that paint we want to dry. So I'm actually going to hit this with my heat tool for a minute and make sure that this paint is it's dry and set before we go to the next step. And if you are watching and then painting, you can do this in reverse. So the step that I'm going to do next probably would have been better to do it first. But I forgot. I was so excited about showing you how to make the marks on the birch trees that I forgot. I forgot this step. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just wetting my birch trees, and I'm not going to worry if a little bit of that color moves. This is going to be fine. If you did this step first, you wouldn't be having to worry about this, because these striations, which I always forget. Anytime I paint birch trees, I always forget what those are called. You would think as often as I've painted birch trees that I would remember that by now. I have to look that up so I can tell you. Okay, and then I'm going to take a little bit. I want to really water down. So if I mix up that, I'm going to call it neutral tint, burnt sienna and the Payne's gray. We'll call that neutral tint. If I mix that up, I would have pulled just a tiny bit off on the side and mixed it with more water so that I have this very light gray. I want this nice light gray value. This is wet, so I'm going to be painting wet into wet, and I'm just going to come down the sides. Don't worry about feeling like this is going to be dark. Watercolor dries lighter, and you're going to see these trees start to take shape. And I'm going to come down this outer side. Right, and then in the center, I'm going to take a little bit of this burnt sienna, and I'm really going to bring some water into that so that this is going to be very light. You see the difference? This is very, very light value. I'm going to bring some of that down my centers. You see how that's getting lighter? If you feel that it's a little dark, you can just dab it. If you did it in the same order as I definitely recommend doing it in the other order. It's so much easier to put these marks on first and then come back with your dark striations here, which those are actually called lenticels. And the black streaks on the trunk of birch trees are called lenticels. And their function is to actually enable the exchange of gases between the tree and the air. So there you go. Lenticels. I think I would remember that. Okay, so I'm just going to wet this one. So for me, some of this color that I, did my lenticels with, it's gonna reactivate and it's gonna move a little bit, and that's fine because if you remember, I'm using that same color to help get the form on the tree, so I'm not gonna worry if that moves a little bit. Because then I'm gonna come with my Payne's Gray, nice light value. So more water, less paint, and I'm going right to that edge. Watercolors definitely have a color shift. When they dry, it will dry lighter. I'm not worried about staying perfectly in my taped off line either, which is why like this has gotten a little wonky, and that's fine because remember that was where the straight edge of that tape was. So yeah, it all works out. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of my burnt sienna. And again, I want this to be a very dilute mixture. There's not a lot of water. I'm just going to grab my 10 round just so I can apply some more water. Because I want this to flow. And these are still going to look like birch trees. I think, right? We don't always have that stark white of our paper. They still look white. They still look like birch trees. We just have a little bit more shape to our trees now. Coming back with a little bit more of the neutral tint. Again, the neutral tint we created. We don't actually have a neutral tint in this set of colors. We have Payne's Gray. Like to me, it's Payne's Indigo. Like it just doesn't look gray to me. It's so blue. I was just working with the burnt sienna because I didn't like the line I had as it faded to the the darker area. I can certainly, I want to try to lighten up that center closer to me. I just have a dry brush or a brush that was wet. I've dried it off and I'm just pulling up a little bit of color, right? Just lifting just a tiny bit with my brush. That smudged over and I think that's great. I'm leaving it where the dark was. Okay, one more tree. One more time. And wet our tree. And again, if you do this as soon as you take the tape off, it is much better. I was just too excited to show you how to do the lenticels. Letting that all the way down. Because then I think your dark looks even darker when you go over it, but I don't know. But you would put this on and just thinning down some more of that so I have a nice light value. You would put these marks on and then you would let it dry before you do your lenticels. Because if you don't let it dry, you're not going to get the nice striations that you need. They're going to fuzz out. And you don't want those to fuzz out. If I could get my paper to stop drying so darn fast, that would be wonderful. Again, don't worry if you don't stay perfectly in your line. It's fine. This one is like a bit darker, but that's okay. I want this to be behind this one. So if this one does look a little darker, it's just going to look like there's some cast shadow from the one in front of it. And we're okay with that. Again, our burnt sienna, thin down with our water. See how I went around? That's a branch that goes up. We're going to pull that way. I dropped my tissue. I had to grab another one. Oh, that was dark. My brush, I'll just lift that back out. Clean brush. Lift some of that out. Okay. I'm going to darken this side a little bit more just because it is behind this tree. I want to push it back. Sorry, my bracelets keep tapping this board. Normally they don't make the noise on the silicone mat, just when I happen to touch them on the palette or something. That might be annoying to some. I just I pause, I look away and just try to see like where might I want some more shadow coming in, just to help make my tree take on more of a rounder shape. Once we have this set, we have to let it dry again because we're going to put some grass in front of it. We're also going to do our branches. See, the way I've done this, I'm assuming my light source is coming from this way because it's casting that shadow back here. It looked a little too sienna for me. It will dry lighter, but it was still just a little bit too much. Just a little. Okay. Now I can come in. I need to create my really dark color again. So that was my burnt sienna and my Payne's Gray. Burnt sienna, Payne's Gray. Bring them together. Nice dark value. I'm using my 6 round, but if that seems a little large for you and you're not comfortable with that, if you have the 4, you can absolutely use the 4. What I'm going to do is where some of those marks are, I'm now going to come back through and I'm just going to drag a few darker spots into my tree. Now remember, if I come around my tree is round. I'm going to want to kind of make that rounded shape just to help, right? Just to help continue giving it its form. I'm just dotting and dragging in a few spaces where I want to darken some of those up even more. And some that are lighter, like this one, I'm just tapping in some variation. Right? So some extra values. Let me bring that up so you can see. So let's look at this one. I'm going to come in here and let's just say this area right here, it's a little darker. And maybe there's some dark here. See, it's just dabbing. We're just dabbing that in, bringing it around. And there's our little marks on our birch trees. I'm just going to continue doing that. Just in a few spaces. I want to darken this up. I don't need to do every space. And I may want to create some new spaces. This is kind of taking on like a little bit of a bump out, and perhaps that is a perfect spot for a branch. And you see how that got really wonky? Now I can work with that. My branch comes up, perhaps there's a little bit that goes off this way. And when it comes out here, one comes out this way. I use those little wonky bits to help me figure out where another part of the branch is going to go. And I don't like that right there. I'm just going to take it right off my page. I think I like that better. This one I think is going backwards. Right? Like it's growing towards the back. And I'm going to let that be nice and thin and just kind of taper out. And if it's lighter, it's going to look like it's going away from me. Right off my tape and my branches. Oops. Sometimes it's easy to overdo our branches as well, right? Get carried away with what we're what we're doing. I'm just looking on my other trees for spots where I can put some more branches because they need some branches. Like this tree. How about if this tree has a branch? I'm looking at how it bumps right here. And I think that right there, perhaps that's where a branch comes out and grows right on in front of that tree. My branch got a little thicker at the other end. So I'm just pulling it backwards because of course it's not going to get thicker as it goes away from the tree. It's going to get thinner. So I just wanted to thicken that up a little bit. I did let this one carry right off my page and it looks like it's kind of going away from us. There's this one. That's a piece that comes up like that. And if you got the dip pens, you could also take this, put it right on, because this is a color we've mixed up. So if we take, I'm just mixing up a little bit more, right? And we take that, touch more water to that. So it'll flow. Mine's drying out. Right? And I can just put that right on where that dot is on the reservoir of this dip pen. Get in there. And I can do some thinner branches. So we can definitely do that as well and utilize our dip pen. And I'm going to let that branch come back behind. Maybe it goes out this way. I'm going to build on this one. Our dip pen can also be used to work on those lenticels. My pen pulled a little bit of my paper. I was just cleaning that off. So yeah, you just take your brush and brush it on. This is behind this tree, so I want to make sure that as I bring this branch, right, as it comes out, it disappears. It stops right at the edge of that tree. And if it continues beyond, well, there it comes. Right, just picture that coming through that way. That's wearing out. So that is a way that you can use your watercolors without actually dipping them in a reservoir. You can just brush it right on your dip pens. I did not get that one very well. I need to get more color together. My burnt sienna was bullying, it was pushing everything away. Why my paint wasn't flowing. And there it goes. So see, I was talking about to like put some more marks in where for the lenticels. You can mark those. Just clean that color off of my nib. And of course you can absolutely take, oops, I just sloshed water right out of my meat and brush wash bowl all over my desk. But you can take a smaller, this is the size 4 round that would come if you did the add-on. See how blue it looks? It looks so blue. That's why that burnt sienna definitely gives us this beautiful neutral tint. Give that a tap, make sure I don't have too much. And you can work on branches for, gosh, for so long. Work on branches as long as you want. Put in as many as you want. And again, if this tree is in front of this tree, if I had a branch that came off, say it happened here, and you see I'm just kind of dabbing This is where the branch is going to grow from, right there. I'm just painting right in front of all those other branches because this tree is closest to us. So we're going to push that back just like that. There we go. I just smudged it. I meant to smudge it straight over. Yeah, it's fine. Just going to put some darker values on top and it'll just kind of disappear. It's not a mistake. It's just a dark spot on the tree. There's a lot of gas being exchanged right there. Right? Putting out all that wonderful oxygen for us. Taking in all that nasty carbon dioxide that we don't need. What will we do without our trees? We need our trees, we need our bees, right? Our pollinators and our oxygen producers. Very important. I feel like that one should be coming like behind here somewhere, but I didn't make the branch big enough and I think it's fine. This is what I'm telling myself. I am convincing myself it is fine. Nobody would be like, well, wait a minute, it just ends. Ready? Because watch it go. And maybe it just comes out back there somewhere. Where's that branch even coming from? I don't know. And then it's like, oh, well, is this coming from this tree? Because that's the way it looks now. So guess what? I just attached it to this tree. That's this tree's branch. And if that's this tree's branch, yet again, it goes in front of, right? That wouldn't go behind it. This, if I make it part of this tree, is now going to come in front of that one. So I'm brushing right over that branch and I'm going right through this tree and off the page. Next time I paint with these, I'll probably use the butcher's tray. Touch that weirdly. It's fine. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger branch because I bumped it wrong. Ooh, anchor it onto the tree a little better. And pull some other pieces off the side. There we go. I made a person tree without realizing it. I hate when I do that, when I have like two arms, you know, they're just going, hey. Yeah, I did not mean to do that. I did not mean to do that in the same spot. But there they are nonetheless. Perhaps we'll just give them another one. No, I don't want a branch there, but we will put some dark marks coming in. Yeah, he's fine. I'm like, part of me just wants to pull a big old, like Bob Ross it and just pull a big old branch up here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it like that. I do love the way that these are connected to the tree. I feel like that looks true to what I see when I look at my trees here in the yard. I'm going to grab some of this cobalt blue just because I was running out of my Payne's gray and it's the end. And I don't want to get more. This is a little bit more green because I didn't. Let's bring some red in. Nope, that's too much. Oh my gosh, I just flicked water out of my thing again. I'm going to dry that blue. See, the liquid watercolors, I got them wet. So then they got really like, let's get all the colors in here. This palette is going to end up getting washed, so I'm not worried about it. I was just trying to make more of a darker color, but it's not happening. All right, let's put some grass. That is, I guess nature telling me, or the universe telling me I'm done with that. Maybe this little dark over here. I just wasn't liking how these were exactly. Okay, leaving it be. So I do have kind of a green a teal green here, and I'm gonna bring it over by my sap green and just kind of, there we go. Want some nice darks. We're gonna flick some, we're gonna get some grasses growing at the bottom of these trees, kind of anchor them into the ground. So I'm just touching and flicking, touch and flick up. So touch, flick, touch, flick. That's how I'm doing those strokes. All right, because nobody's done any weed eating around those trees. Let's get some of this. This is our sap green, and I'm going to pull just a little bit of this into it, just to darken her up. I'm doing some more, a few more. I'm going to do some that are lighter. Right, we want a variation. I'll put a few sprigs that pop up in the grass here. I don't want too many. I'll just do 3 little sections, right? That's fine. Let's get our sap green. Remember, when our sap green is more dilute, more water than paint, it's much lighter. Let's put some of these values in here. It's really light. It's not really showing up. We need it stronger. Need some more muscles. Just tapping at the bottom. You see, we're going to fix this too, so it doesn't just look like some weird like growth that wouldn't actually happen. Like, why is this all smooth and this is not? Or just these colors aren't working with the ground. So if I take my brush, this is, you see it's much wetter. And I'm just coming in at the base of where I put my grass. Let's kind of pull that out a little bit. Again, little flicks. Little flicks through that paint that I just set down. Now I'm going to rinse my brush, tap it on my sponge. Make sure I don't have water on my ferrule. And I'm just going to come, this is just a damp brush. I am just softening this edge and helping that to blend in and kind of disappear. So again, rinse my brush. I'm going to rinse my brush off, tap it, make sure there's no water on my ferrule. Right? I want that brush to be pretty well dried out of water. And I might have already waited too long for these two. Yep, too long. They dried that fast. See, this one I got. You got to come right back with the dampness. Let's do it again. Anyway, my paper's damp now, so I'm just going to put some of these in. You do one tree at a time if you need to. Things dry so fast around here. Just flicking some more grasses like coming forward off this tree. So again, that's rinse, tap, no drops of water on my ferrule. Just going to blend down through. It's just going to soften the edge and let it kind of gently fade into what we already had. I do it again on this one. So my brush is wet right now. A little too wet. Take my green, just dropping it in. See, that's a lot of green. This paper is like going to absorb it quickly, at least in my studio, is flicking some of that up. Just a little tiny, just with the tip of my brush. Bringing this out here. Right, so just with the tip, breaking that plane of where the paint is. And get just a tiny bit of this darker color. Just because it's pushed back a little bit more. I want some of the darker values right in here, up close against this tree to help push it back. Could have done the same on that side, but pull some of those darks up so it doesn't just look like a blob of dark paint there. Put that down, flick some grasses through, rinse my brush, wipe that off, and just with a damp brush, pull it out. Now it looks like there's kind of on a little bit of a mound right here, right? Because we have these marks going at an angle there. And I actually don't mind that. I think that looks good. Just gonna leave it like that. And then we're nice warm in our foreground. We don't know how far that field goes back. We have our little birch trees. Let's warm up our tape and remove it and check out the border on this one. Now see right here, I could easily put Happy Father's Day or Happy Birthday or nothing at all. Leave it just the way it is. And that would be okay too. And just put a sentiment on the inside of the card. Or if you're painting this one just because you like birch trees, that's fine, just the way it is. Let me dry it. I'm going to dry my paint, warm my tape, and we're going to peel that off, and we are done with this one. And of course, it is always best if you want it to dry nice and flat, leave it taped and let it just dry on its own. Don't even use the heat tool, just let it dry on its own. And usually that paper will shrink right back down and it will remain nice and flat. Me, I am, for the purpose of the video, I can't do that. Well, I could, but I'm not going to. We're going to peel our tape. Look at that beautiful edge. Look at that. Again, always pulling away from my paper. And with a card, you can choose, you can sign it in a few different places. We'll talk about that in just a second. Oh, look at that nice clean edge. And I'm just going to remove this board out of the way. Do you see? That's what I'm working with. It was just it's like an MDF and it's black on both sides. It is one of their chalkboards. That's what they sell it as, is a chalkboard. And I think they're perfect for taping down my paintings too. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you're going to give this one a try. I hope you've painted along with me today. Now, for signing it, we could sign it in a couple places. I could always use my little dip pen if you got a dip pen, or you could use just like a micron pen, right? That's the 00503. I kind of like 03s, but you could sign it. I could sign it here on the front of my card. I could sign, in the border somewhere if you taped off your border, or you could sign here. Because this is a card, if I sign here, then I'm signing the back of it. And if I don't write anything on here and they would like to frame this, they could easily do that. And I think this is 5x7. Yep, that's a 5x7. So it would fit perfectly in a 5x7 frame. I like to do cards in that size, 5x7 or 4x6, because here, at least in the US, those are standard frame sizes. So if somebody wants to frame the card that they have and keep the artwork, they can certainly do that. So yeah, or I used to sign the back of my cards. I used to sign them here, but then they'd have to keep it together to keep the signature. Here, they could actually cut this part off if they wanted to and just have an actual original piece of my artwork. So I think today I'm going to sign right here, and I want to sign really small. I'm going to go with the smaller. Go with the smaller one. This nib is terrible. If I would have known that, I would not have chosen this pen. Made it very hard to get my signature. This one is done. This nib is just trashed. So there we go. I have mine signed right there. And then if they should frame it, again, this is 5x7, so yeah, it'll still show. There we go. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you're enjoying your curated collection. Until next time, my friends, keep creating, and I will see you in a video real soon. Perhaps you'd like to watch this one. Bye, guys.